everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So I had someone comment on one of the blog posts that I did a few weeks back where, what's going on?
I'm just trying to make an adjustment for head size. I was a little bit too far back. Maybe you're a little bit too far forward.
Okay, my head's too big, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, which is very rarely the case. Other than metaphorically, of course.
So...
Anyway, moving swiftly on.
And then what I had said in the post is that the honeymoon phase of a relationship is actually not time limited. What it is during that time, we're just in a really open-hearted place, and that we're not caught up in insecurity and anxiety and worry. And so it looks like that experience is coming from the other person, but actually it's a reflection of us not being caught up in our own negative thinking and feeling the internal freedom and joy that's there when we have that experience.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about our honeymoon period, which is probably when I came over to Canada to hang out with you, I guess in a sort of vacation-like setting on the west coast of Canada, your mum's beautiful property in Vancouver. And then when you came to London, I probably wasn't appreciating the extent to which you felt like a fish out of water being in, what it was essentially a foreign city. Although you were born there, you moved when you were, 6 years of age, so you probably didn't have much of a recollection of city life or London city life. So I think that you got terribly insecure, and my reaction to that was to sort of go into sort of tame and control mode in the best way that I could see fit, which now looking back were in quite comical ways, I think. Or it seems and sounds quite comical to reflect on that now. And there are too many instances to mention in this brief vlog that we're doing. But one that springs readily to mind was this moment where I know that you were really suffering and you were obviously pretty depressed about living in London, and it was pissing with rain that entire summer, so that probably wasn't to your liking in many respects, but there are all sorts of other events and conditions that probably were unpalatable, shall we say. So you were definitely, I would say, a little volatile at that point in our relationship. But I remember being in the kitchen of the house where I was living at the time, and having this agenda and feeling like I should tell you that this relationship is not going to work. In fact, this relationship is going to come to a pretty quick end if you don't sort your anger out.
But you said that you were not really meaning that.
No, I wasn't meaning it at all. It was just like, if I said this, this was like a card I was playing.
This is disciplinary measures.
It was disciplinary measures, and of course this is what I told you, and you said, basically you said something to the effect that no, I'm not going to change, and you're just going to have to accept me for what I am. And I'm like, oh no, I wasn't planning on that response at all. So it was kind of like, and I had no intention of leaving you or finishing the relationship. I just felt sure that would be a card that I could play, which there would be some dividends in that. And it was the total opposite. But in a sense, that was a great thing for you to say, because, that's really how it should be. I should be able to accept you for what you are. But in my mind, it was like completely, making you responsible for how I was feeling inside, not understanding that I was feeling my thinking. I was really in a situation of being a total victim and blaming you for all my woes. But it was kind of funny now to think back on all those little techniques I came up with to try and get you back on an even keel, try and tame and control and try and manage the relationship. And that's just one, I think, of many. The one that is the most hysterical was there was a point where I've got nothing in my weapons closet. There's just like nothing I can throw at this woman that's ever going to like change her. So there was one point where you'd done something that was not to my liking. I remember standing, I think, wherever I was in the living room, and I started punching myself in the face. It's like, look what you're doing to me. Bang! Look, it's like something out of Monty Python. Look what you're doing to me. This is you. This is you. and I actually gave myself a black eye. And then the following day we had to go to Sunday lunch at my mum and dad's, and my mother's like, why do you have a black eye? And I walked into a cupboard. And she totally didn't believe me. And then obviously,
Do you think that I beat you?
No. Well, like the sainted Rohini couldn't do anything on that level. They seem to love you for some reason. I think she assumed that I got into some sort of drunken brawl or something. But that's just an example of like, I guess the lengths that I would go to try and tame and control my partner in some very obscure, but maybe nevertheless quite creative ways.
Did that work?
No, nothing worked. Nothing worked at all. And I think the funny thing is that I think that at some point where, I think probably by the time we got to the US of A, we kind of switched roles where you were no longer the depressed one. That was all on my shoulders. I'm like, I've done all that I can do. There's just no hope. What's happening in my life? And I think that I went into pretty serious depression.
Well, you were a fish out of water. When we moved back here, it was like I was home and you were the one that felt all of the
Exactly, I
things
was
I
a
went
total
through.
fish out of water. So we just reversed our roles. And then I don't know if you were like then trying to change me. I think we're probably both guilty of that very process to a greater and lesser degrees.
Well, I think we both fell into the misunderstanding that our happiness was dependent on the other person being happy too. It looked like if you were, angry with me or irritable with me or behaving badly, it looked like, I couldn't be happy if you were in a low mood. And I think you felt the same way. You couldn't be happy if I was sobbing on the bed for hours. Like you needed me to be different.
Yeah.
And I think that's really common with couples is that we look to find our own happiness outside of ourselves rather than realizing that it's actually within. And that honeymoon period is actually the evidence of that. It shows us what's possible and what's available, not because it's the other person, but because that level of joy is within us. And that's really what we're doing in terms of rewilding relationships and rewilding the love in relationships, is helping people to see how that can flourish and grow and can continue to expand. It doesn't just have to be limited to a short period of time at the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah, and I think the fatal mistake that people make when they get into a relationship and they have that honeymoon period is that they are making their partner responsible for their happiness, that they believe it's actually their partner and finding this glorious partner that ticks all the boxes of what happiness looks like as being their savior on that front. And then, for the people who are less fortunate that then have to experience the highs and lows of a relationship, and the lows suddenly look like they can attach all this meaning to, that it's all of a sudden, they don't tick the boxes. In fact, they're ticking all the wrong boxes now. And that's when things go south. And it's just seeing that those are just the ups and downs of a relationship. It's nothing that we need to attach a great deal of meaning to. And I think it's so easy to do that. And I certainly did that, and I'm pretty sure you did too.
I did too, yeah. And that's the other thing. If we can rewild our relationship, anybody can.
That's right, for sure. 100%.
Well, have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.